Good morning and welcome to the 2020 Voices United online conference. I am Marianne East. I'm one of the webmasters for Voices United, and I'm delighted to preside over one of our first sessions this morning. Before we begin, I want to make sure that we say a thank you to Max Nolan, our technician, who has made all of the technical magic happen for all of our sessions throughout the next 2 days. And as we proceed, please place any comments or any questions in the chat box that you see on YouTube. And then later on, after our presenter has finished, I will then help to navigate questions at the end. So please put them in the chat. So this morning, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Jacqueline Horner-Kwiatek, who is going to present this morning. She is a singer and a conductor, an educator, and a composer, so wearing many hats. She was a member of the world-renowned vocal quartet Anonymous 4 for a number of years, and she'll talk to you a little bit more about that. She's also the artistic director of Modern Medieval Voices, a women's ensemble dedicated to creating programs that combine early music with new commissions. Dr. Horner-Kwiatek is also on the faculty of Princeton University, where she teaches early music, an early music vocal ensemble, as well as on the voice faculty of New York University. And teaching at Juilliard School as well. So without further ado, I am going to hand things over to Jacqueline. Good morning.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here and to get the opportunity to present to all of you. Excuse me. Yes, my name is Jacqueline Horner-Kwiatek, and I was for many years a member of the Ensemble Anonymous 4. And working with Anonymous 4, working in a small ensemble without a conductor, meant that we really had to think about ensemble technique. What do we do? How do we do it? How do we work together? And so what I learned working with Anonymous 4, I've carried through to my work with my new ensemble, Modern Medieval Voices. And also as a conductor with Early Music Princeton, where I conduct the vocal ensemble there. And I've also started to compose as well. So I'm kind of seeing the work that an ensemble has to do in order to function well from these different perspectives. Singer, conductor, composer. So what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about what I do when I give ensemble technique workshops. Methods, approaches that help enforce or reinforce what we need to have as ensemble members. So I'd like to share a slide with you. And there we are. So what makes a good ensemble? A list of attributes that we all, I'm sure, agree on. And it really is about unity, the ability to work together as a unit. And that can be kind of Russian dolls as well, the unit of each section, and then the unit of the choir as a whole. Really, really important to be thinking about those two things. Trust and willingness to collaborate. That's such a big, important part of what we do, whatever size the ensemble and whether there's a conductor or not, or no conductor, is really being able to work together uh, without fear, if I can put it that way, because it can be it can be scary, contributing to an ensemble and really feeling that you are equal part of the group. So that willingness to collaborate. Now, the ability to listen, not just hear, I feel is a particularly important one, because there is a lot of instruction that is given from the conductor to the choir, sometimes within the choir to each other. And you really, really need to listen to what's being said and process it. And that's something that we need to work on our listening skills as an ensemble. The ability to adapt and change. We all know that sometimes if we really love a piece and we've sung it a million times, we don't want to change our approach to it, perhaps in a new ensemble or in a new way. So we really have to be flexible. Flexibility is a big thing. The ability and willingness to solve problems as a team. Again, always making sure that you know that you are part of a group, that it's not just about you. Every individual's contribution is really, really important, but it also has to feed into the group itself. And we'll talk a little bit about the team in a moment. An awareness of self and others. I really find that listening and awareness are the two kind of core skills that an ensemble needs. I find sometimes that you not being aware of the people around you when you're singing in an ensemble can lead to over-singing, lack of blend, all of those situations that can come up. Being aware of your own contribution is very important, but being aware of others' contributions and how they relate is really essential. And that leads into blend, accuracy, and unity of intent. There really is no way of achieving blend or group accuracy without all of the things that I've listed above. Now, unity of intent. I just want to explain that. That term really, I'm not saying Anonymous Four invented it, but it's a term that we used a lot amongst ourselves. And what that really means is that once you have decided as a group, with your conductor or without a conductor, how a piece goes, what the phrasing is, where the important note is, what the important word is, where the dynamics come in, everybody has to really, really agree to that and come on board with that, so that you get the excuse me, you get the feeling that it's basically like you're all wheels in the car or the truck, and everybody's revolving at the same speed. Because if somebody's a little late or they don't quite match because they're thinking of it in a different way, as we know, it really, really ruins the cohesiveness of the piece. So unity of intent is a big phrase that I'm very fond of using in my workshops. And finally, really, communication. The different levels and layers of communication that we need between conductor and ensemble, of course. Between ensemble members, you really want to feel that you're all in the same boat. You're all working together. And the final one is between ensemble and audience. I mention that because I think sometimes it doesn't work in the same way. It's kind of the last thing we think about when we're rehearsing, in a way, because we're so busy trying to make sure the piece is right, we're being accurate, that we're really working together to put the piece together, and then we perform it and there's an audience there. And what do? People have to look up from their music, of course, but they also have to look past the conductor to the audience and really, really communicate. And this is where one might experiment with where the conductor stands. Maybe you stand a little to the side. In the ensembles that I work with, and of course we're talking small ensembles, I lead, but I'm also singing. So I'm actually leading from the inside. But just experimenting perhaps a little bit with where you want to be. So how do we achieve all of this? Well, we have to really think about strengthening and building the relationships between the members of the ensemble. Building the sense of family, which I think any good ensemble has. Every ensemble is different. I always say it's like putting ingredients together to make a stew. It's never going to taste exactly the same because the ingredients are always going to be a little different amounts of different ingredients altogether, perhaps. But we want to put things together, and the only way to do that is to really lean on, think about strengthening and building those relationships. Don't assume that they automatically appear. Establishing the leadership of the conductor. If you have a conductor, if you are a conductor, you want to very much establish your leadership, but in a collaborative way, which is the third point. I feel it's very, very important. I have worked with many ensembles throughout the years, particularly when I was a young singer at college. And, you know, some conductors are the old school of conducting where they would barely look at you. And I've had conductors, you know, really be quite insulting to the singers at times. And I don't think that happens anymore. I really don't think so. But it's really thinking we're all in this together. And if you're really feeling that as a singer, if you really feel that the conductor has your back and the conductor in turn feels that you have their back, then everybody works together. I remember once singing in a choir at Trinity Wall Street, actually. I sang in Trinity before I joined Anonymous 4. And there was a moment in a piece we were singing. I can't even remember what the piece was now. It was something by Samuel Barber. I think it was the Adagio for strings, but it was rearranged for voices. And there was a moment after a profound silence that the sopranos had to come in. And it was one of those moments where everybody just lost it. And nobody knew what to do. And the only thing that happened was we all locked eyes. We kind of looked at each other peripherally and then looked at the conductor. And we all took a breath together and came in. And thankfully, we knew to do that because the trust in the relationship had been established. Knowledge of vocal and choral pedagogy, which also ties into say what you need to get what you want. I do feel it's very important that we really do know how to help our singers create the sounds we want them to create. You know, if we say the dreaded straight tone, sing with straight tone sopranos, that doesn't really help to say that. The problem with that is that it can make people tighten their throats, stop the airflow, because they want to essentially straighten out sound. And you can produce that kind of color. I mean, it was Anonymous 4. This is something we worked on a lot. You can produce that kind of color with good support and really playing with where the focus, where the resonance is, and also playing with the airflow, so that you can get perhaps less color in the sound rather than thinking of straight tone. So yes, developing the communication, collaborative skills, as I was saying, and listening and awareness of others. And when words are not enough, I put that in here because I do feel that we want to always communicate not just by saying, I want you to sing this louder. Think about how you can convey that purely by gesture, not just hands, but also face, the eyes, the body even. Everything comes into play. And I think that when communication and trust is really, really established, those kind of things work really, really well. So I'm going to get to this slide, and this is just a list of things that I do in my ensemble technique workshop. And I want to get out of my share so I can just talk to you a little bit more about what these things are. So what I was saying was, why a circle and why games? I always like to put everybody in a circle. I hope I'm full screen, by the way, because what I'm seeing is myself as a thumbnail in the corner. So I'm just hoping that everybody is seeing me on full screen. Anyway, why a circle? So everybody can see each other. When choirs warm up, they tend to be in their sections and they tend to be in rows as they would perform. And I find that putting people in a circle and mixing them up is a really, really great thing because they get, as I said, they get to see each other. They get to be beside people that they're maybe not normally beside. And if you can pass things around the circle, there's various games that we can play. The name game is one of my favorites, and I can demonstrate that to you a little bit. It may be something that you, of course, do already, but it's a great icebreaker. It's especially good at the beginning of the choral season when new members are joining the choir and everybody's trying to get to know each other. And it really involves setting up a rhythm. A 4 rhythm is the best. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you get everybody to do this. and you establish the group rhythm, and then the first person on the last click says their name. So I would do this, Jackie. And then the next person, going to my left or my right, will repeat my name on the first click. Jackie, Jenny. Then the next person, Jenny, Arthur. Right? And it goes around. So you basically hear your name, and you repeat it, and then you pass it on to the next person. And what happens is people forget their own names, which is it's a really fun game, because people really do forget, or they become confident. Well, I know Arthur, I don't need to remember, and then they forget. So it's a great starter, but it can be developed further. You can get people to say their names with some sort of inflection. Jackie! And then the person has to repeat my name in the way that I said it. So it's not just the name, it's also the vocal inflection. You can take that further. They can sing their name. Jackie, Jackie, Jenny, etc. It just depends on the enthusiasm, the interest, the level, what you feel would be helpful. And then, of course, it can be word association. You pass around house, party, party time, etc. And of course, you'll find people will just pick a word, I'm going to say banana no matter what anybody says to me, but they'll get thrown off, of course, because they'll get something that they're not expecting. And it's such fun, and it breaks down. I've never done it where it doesn't break down at some point, and then we just have to start it again. And of course, this starts to speed up terribly as everybody's getting nervous. And so it's a really great exercise just to get everybody just to keep the tempo steady, keep very centered, and then use their voices and their brains to provide the vocal level of the exercise. And, these kind of exercises, they seem very simple. But what they do is they start to make people really think in different ways about how they work together. Even just a simpler thing is just establishing that rhythm. Everybody really has to, not just to listen and to look, to make sure that they really are keeping together. It's incredibly helpful. So then you can pass other things around the circle once you've done that. You can pass rhythm. One person will start a different rhythm. Maybe they'll do, and they can, body percussion is always very helpful. So maybe they do a 3, maybe a quick 3. And then the next person has to instantly pick it up so that it really passes around the circle like a metronome. Doing that with eyes closed can also be very helpful. Any of these things with eyes closed, because then you don't have the visual aspect anymore. You've got to really, really listen. And vowel matching, passing vowels around the circle. Everybody in their own octave has to match the shape of the vowel. And of course, if they have to modify, that gets factored in, and that can actually generate discussion about what we do with vowel modification. And then you can build chords from that, of course. And then group dynamics can be really fun as well, because you can really get people to, without any kind of conducting, listen. Just say you're going to start at PP and you're going to go to forte, and see what that means. Because it's the group dynamic, not an individual dynamic. And that's something that everybody finds out and figures out for themselves when they aren't necessarily being directed. So I want to go on to, and sorry, I just also wanted to say about small group work. Even with big choirs, you can do all of this, by the way. I've done workshops with choirs of over 100 people, and it really does work. It takes a little longer, but it works. And it also means people really have to pay attention for longer, which is a good thing, good skill. And in small group work, you can do this in sectionals. It's even more intense, shall we say, in sectionals, because what happens is the smaller group has to really think about singing in unison, because you're working on just their individual part. And working on it a cappella, whether it's supposed to be a cappella or not, is especially if it's not supposed to be. I do a lot of a cappella work as a singer, but also as a workshop leader. It really makes them think about how they work together as a unit, and stops perhaps individual voices coming out a little bit too much. You get people in the section who feel that they're they're strong singers, and they maybe are strong singers, but they sing too loud. And one of the best things you can do is just get everybody in a sectional to shut their eyes and to either sing a line of music or even just sing, hold a chord. Or just hold one long ah, change it to e, and just get them to really listen and tell them if they can only hear themselves, they're too loud. So all of this work can be bigger, it can become smaller, but it really is a way for people to start thinking outside of themselves and think about what the group is doing. So I want to just, I think I'm running behind time, so I'm going to just speed up a little bit. But I want to talk about the corporate world for a second. All of this work that I've done, my husband is in the corporate world. And I would tell him about workshops that I would be leading and games that I would play and strategies. And he said, well, that sounds like corporate team building. And so I started to investigate that a little bit. And I discovered that actually a lot of what I do is are corporate team building games, and I didn't even know. Getting people in a circle to pass things around the circle is very much a thing that corporate team building strategies involve. And the goals and strategies for corporate teams really are very, very similar. I'm just going to share this screen with you just quickly. So let me just get to it. This is actually a quote from Indeed.com, which is a job site, but it's the perfect quote about the goals and strategies for corporate team building. In the corporate world, great teams produce consistent quality work. Often their excellence is not only due to the skills and experience each teammate brings, but the team's chemistry, their ability to collaborate, cooperate, support each other, and unify to meet goals. Team building exercises bring team members together because they help teammates strengthen bonds, develop teamwork, enjoy each other's company, and have fun. Now, if you just substitute corporate for choral and teams for choirs or vocal ensembles, it's absolutely the perfect summing up of what makes a good ensemble. And to kind of prove that, there are 5 main types of team building activities that are very commonplace that you find on any team building site. And if I bring this slide up, the list of the great attributes of a good choral ensemble that I was going over at the beginning of the presentation match up almost perfectly with the corporate, what makes a good team in the corporate world. And it really does, again, come down to communication, adaptability, building trust, and collaboration. So I want to just let's talk about a couple of team building exercises in the corporate world. Old song, new lyrics, and the rhythm section, layering to create a piece. Old song, new lyrics is something you could actually do maybe even online as well. It's a game that every corporate team building workshop does, and I've done it with choirs as well. You divide into groups, you go off in corners, you either pick a song or it's given to you, one that everybody knows. Let's say Amazing Grace, just for example. So everybody goes and they think of new lyrics, and maybe there's they're given a theme that they have to put new lyrics to. It might be about the choir, could be about anything. And then of course they come back and they will sing it to everybody. Now, it's a really fun thing to do, and it's difficult, but it really makes people think about the importance of text and how you communicate. Because I think sometimes when we all work in ensemble, we're so concerned of getting the notes right, making sure we're tuning, making sure maybe we're not too loud, or all the concerns we have. We forget we're actually telling a story, because we're always telling a story of some kind when we sing. That's the point. That's why voice is such a special instrument, because we have text, we tell stories. So having them come up with their own story to tell, and have to sing it, and have to articulate it, and really, really get them to act it out, and really, really convey the meaning, is a really, really great thing to do, a great game to play with a choir, for just a little bit more of text, just thinking about the text and enunciating the text. And the other game that happens in the corporate world a lot is building rhythm, creating a piece out of rhythm. And I've done that with choirs too, and it's really, really fun. You can start with the 4 that I was mentioning earlier, the name game 4. But then each member of the team has to build on that. They can come up with other body percussion. They can come up with, they can get a pencil and hit a table. They can do vocal percussion, of course. Ba, ch, ch. They can make fun vocal sounds, extended vocal techniques. They can, of course, make a little melody. Do, 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 do. And then somebody wants to harmonize with that, maybe sing it a third down. You can do anything you want. It can really be as complicated or as simple as you like. And then everybody will demonstrate. And the really great thing about this, and why it works perfectly in the choral world as well as the corporate world, is that it really gives everybody a role to play. Everybody is part of the rhythm section, is part of the piece. And you can really demonstrate that by somebody else, as one team is performing, they point at somebody and they cut out for a moment. And then you point, they come back in. So you can hear what happens when one of the instruments leaves. And how important each component is. And it can be really, really fun. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. But it's just a great way to build collaboration and to build teamwork. It can be a especially good thing to do for each section to do. So there's the soprano team and there's the alto team and all of that. So other things that corporate building games that can be adapted for the choral ensemble that don't involve music. Things like, again, passing things around the circle, as I mentioned before. One game that my husband told me is the whisper game, where you all stand in a circle, and ideally a little further apart than usual. So somebody has to whisper to one person, and then they have to whisper to the next person. Now, if everybody hears it, that's not so good. So what you might want to do is you go up to the person, you whisper in their ear, and they hear it, and then they walk over to the next person. But ideally, the person who does this will say something slightly odd. So you really have to listen. What on earth did they say? And of course, by the time it gets around the circle, it may very well have changed completely. But it's definitely all about listening and diction, articulation. Another one is Can You Hear Me? This is a game where two people stand in front of each other and they start having a perfectly normal conversation. And then gradually, they both step back from each other. But they keep talking. And they have to find a way to make the other person still be able to hear them without just resorting to shouting or yelling. So again, diction, articulation, over-articulation, gestures, all sorts of things come into play. And if you do it with, say there's 3 or 4 teams and everybody else watches, that can get really fun because of course you're also competing with other people. So you have to be very focused on your conversation and try to just not let the others distract you. So again, a really good focus exercise. Tell Me a Story is a great it's a corporate team building game. It has different ways of doing it. One person can start a story and then end it in mid-sentence, and the next person has to continue. There was a guy called George. He went out for a walk one day. During his walk, he saw, and the next person has a horse. The horse was pink. George thought the next person has to. Well, you get the idea. And it's funny. You've got to really think on your feet. The conductor, the leader of this particular game, of course, can point at different people to continue the story. So it's not necessarily the next person in the circle, which keeps everybody on their toes, and they have to keep listening because they don't know when they're going to get called on. Another version of Tell Me a Story that is, I think, can be helpful for a conductor is you can pick something you're going to tell everybody, a short paragraph, but something has a little detail. There were 5 sisters. Their names were, and you give the names of the sisters. One was a nurse, one was a doctor, and all sorts of little details, and everybody has to listen. And then they have to tell you. Then you ask questions. So how many were there? What were their names? You can make it as complicated as you like, and see just how well people actually listen to what you said. and if you really make it obscure, you can go as far as you want with that. It can get pretty funny what they heard, what they thought they heard. And then finally, there's a very silly game called PowerPoint Roulette that you can play, that my husband has played many times and he's told me about. You pick, say, 5 people who are going to give a PowerPoint presentation. 5 people who each will make a drawing, which is going to be the PowerPoint slide, which you don't see, of course. And then everybody else is there as the audience to ask questions. So if I get up as the first, so I'm told we're going to give a presentation today on Handel's Messiah. So I'm handed the first PowerPoint slide. So say it's this, it's a house, right? I have no idea what it's going to be. And I just have to make something up. And you encourage everybody, make it up. Just come up with some fantastical thing. So here's the house. This is the house Handel was born in. Not a lot of people know, but Handel actually was born in Northern Ireland, which is where I'm from. In fact, he lived down the street from where I was born. This is his house. He wrote the Messiah in this house. And you just come up with crazy stuff. And then the next person stands up and they're handed something. Maybe they're handed a very bad drawing of a cat. This is Handel's cat. Handel's cat actually wrote the Messiah. Not a lot of people know that. It can get very silly, but it makes people think on their feet. The people presenting have to really, really be in the moment. The people creating the drawings have to be very creative, of course. What am I going to give them to do? People who are asking questions have to come up with really fun things to ask. And then, of course, you can swap it around. Everybody gets to do everything. But it's just a way to have everybody be in the moment and have to adapt very quickly. You can't, if you hand somebody a piece of paper and they say, oh, I don't want that one, is there another one? You can't do that. You have to roll with it. And that's what we all have to do in this world, and especially right now. So in conclusion, all games have a serious purpose. All of this is a way to connect and communicate and to build the team. Team choir, team soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and team choir. And of course, this is something that I would have been doing this with you in person if circumstances were different. We would have been playing these games. We would have been discussing all of this. So how do we continue this work remotely? And I don't have any real answers for that, other than we do have to keep connecting. Rehearsing, of course, is almost impossible, other than pre-recorded things that people can come together and perhaps listen to. But the communication, the team building can be done a different way. Have a Zoom meeting, either for the entire choir or for a sectional. The conductor or a section leader should lead it so that it has a direction. But you can do things like, you can do the name game, but it would be you would call out somebody else's name, and they'd have to really make sure they're listening to hear their name called, so then they will say their name and say somebody else's. Things like that. You can tell stories. You can do the old song, new lyrics game. People can go in breakout rooms and come up with new lyrics, and then one person is the soloist who will then sing it for everybody, because of course we can't sing together. But all of this really is just to try to make sure that we stay engaged as much as possible. People can have listening parties too. If you're planning your repertoire for when we can all sing together again, have a listening party. People bring different recordings off the piece, and you discuss it. What you like about that, what you don't like. You can have games. People bring their favorite song, their favorite aria, whatever, and then you have to guess who's singing, or you have to, discuss what you like and what you don't like about it. Engagement. That's really what it's all about. And so just finally, I just want to, I have to scroll my way down my PowerPoint just to get to my my last page. I just wanted to give you my my contact information, because this is something that I do a lot of. I am doing it online now, but I certainly want to be doing it in person again whenever possible. So if you ever want to contact me about this, there's my contact info, and we can certainly, take the conversation further. But I thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'm going to hand this over to Marianne now. I'll stop my share, and I'm going to hand it over to Marianne now in case there's any questions anybody has.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. We do have a few questions. One, you did talk a little bit about how we could translate some of these activities virtually. And so somebody had asked if you actually have done some of them virtually to this point.
That's a really great question. I'm just about to. This is I am well, everything's starting up again as we know, and in Early Music Princeton, we have all these plans for our singers. We are going to collaborate with Princeton Laptop Orchestra. So we're going to do early music and electronics. We're going to bring those together. And we have a virtual recording project for the museum at Princeton. We are going to be recording pieces from the Middle Ages to go with their exhibit that are going to be posted online. And so I have to find ways not just to do the recordings and to bring these projects together, but again to engage everybody. So the last thing that I just said about the listening, that's the first thing we're going to be doing. Our first meeting is going to be, hey everybody, we're going to do our best to do the name game as I was describing it, where everybody's going to kind of call out their own names, and we're going to share recordings. Just pick your favorite recording. Play a little bit off it, and why is it your favorite? Let's talk about it. What do you like about it? And have as much discussion as we can, and whenever possible, to go into breakout rooms so smaller groups can work together as well. So I'm going to be doing all this in a few weeks, actually. And as I said, it's a learning process for me as much as anybody else right now. I think that's, we've all been thrown in the deep end, haven't we? And we're all swimming. And I think it's amazing that what the creativity that this is bringing forth. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think everybody's much more forgiving about
Yes.
trying new things and being adventurous. I think that's
Exactly. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. We'll try. I think
yeah.
that's the thing. Let's just keep trying.
Yeah. I like the idea of discussing the different recordings, especially for younger students, high
Yeah.
school students, even elementary students, to
Mm.
build that musical vocabulary of how do we
Yes.
talk about music intelligently and learning how to talk about pitch and rhythm and precision and things like that. That's really,
Exactly, exactly. And actually I have done that before, the listening, not remotely, but it will work just as well remotely. And they could bring anything. I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be classical or anything else, especially if it was a music history class, and they brought everything from hip hop to, an opera aria. It was like, okay, but why do you like that? What
Mhm.
about that do you like? Really making them critical listening, critical thinking is helpful.
Absolutely. Max had a question that went back towards the beginning of your presentation about that the idea of unity of intent.
Mm.
And he was asking, do you find that the ensemble finds that unity of intent organically, or is it more through careful planning and leading from the conductor, or is it a little bit of both?
What I found, certainly, especially with Anonymous Foreign, of course, we didn't have a conductor, but a conductor absolutely would be the eyes and ears. It can be done either way. Is to really do some of this work that I've been discussing, especially things like vowel matching. That when you're singing something, one of the reasons frequently why it goes out of tune is because the vowels don't match. So you want to discuss what's the best vowel for this particular piece or for this particular word. Does it have to modify? And I know that's kind of it can be rather granular work a little bit, but if you just work purely on vowels and just match them going up and down, all, the five main vowels, of course, and particularly in sections as well. I find that that's the thing to get first, is for everybody to be unified as the soprano section, as the alto section, etc., so that they really feel not just that they're singing the same colors are coming out in the voice, the same shape of vowel, but also, as I was saying earlier, that no one voice is louder than another voice. Everybody should be an equally sized wheel in the car, or in the truck, or whatever. And honestly, eyes shut. Get people just to sing something, get them to memorize a phrase, get them to shut their eyes, sing it a cappella. This is the other thing, because people tend to follow the piano. And of course they do when they're learning it, but you want to get rid of that as fast as you can. So everybody has to take responsibility. And especially with the eyes shut, they have to do it without the conductor. They have to take responsibility, collective responsibility, and that's where the unity of intent can really come out, where everybody has to move together, because there's really come no choice. So it can take a little while, and after a while, as I said, some of these, when you do some of this, people don't necessarily know why they're doing it. But then and that's when the organic nature of it just starts to become a habit. Oh, it feels good to sing so perfectly in tune that I almost don't think I'm singing anymore, which is a wonderful thing when that happens. So it will develop, but it can take a little while. But when it happens, it's really wonderful.
Awesome.
Oh,
Building off that idea of which I feel very strongly about our personal responsibility
yeah.
to the ensemble. Daniel asks if a corporate team equals a choral ensemble, that
Mm.
comparison that you were making, should we also assume that each member needs to develop their personal skills and knowledge to be productive, and must be individually recognized by the leadership?
I think it's really important that every single person feels equally valued in an ensemble. I really think so. And I know it can be hard, especially really big ensembles where people can get a little lost. It's just the nature of it. But whatever the conductor can do to really focus on, and again, I think that's really with blend, because you never want to single somebody out. I mean, ideally you don't. It's like, John, you're flat there. You never want to do that. But you might want to like in the ensemble, if you're hearing something, I need a little bit more of the of John's color there. Just let's bring that out. Let everybody feel that they have a valuable contribution to make, and that's actually why circle exercises can be really good. They can be a little scary for some people, but everybody's responsible for passing the sound on the circle. If you stop, or if you're not as maybe as confident as somebody else, it might affect the flow. So everybody kind of learns how important they are in as part of the team, and that's why, as I said, these kind of circle exercises are used in the corporate world quite a bit, because it's giving everybody a vested interest, and the rhythm game where everybody is a component of the rhythmic piece that gets developed. It's just really important to build confidence, I think, with everybody. And of course, if there is an issue, if the conductor's hearing an issue, somebody's having an issue with tuning, you can kind of say, I think that Jimmy, your eval, maybe just make that a little brighter, a little higher. It's the kind of thing we would talk about in anonymous forum. We didn't want to say, yeah, I think you're a bit flat here. We would say, I think the color isn't quite right. It's bringing the pitch down. So can we brighten up the color? Maybe you need to brighten your vowel a little bit. You can kind of do a little tweaking, which isn't criticism. It's just I need a little more from you, and a little less from you, to make the unit, and then everybody responds, and then it will 9 times out of 10 will fix it. If there's a huge problem, like the person really really can't sing in tune, that might be something the conductor has to deal with on an individual basis, maybe with some ear training or something. Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just checking our chat here to make sure
Mhm.
I haven't missed any questions. I hate the fact that it looks like I'm ignoring you and I'm
Oh no, not at
here.
all. Not at all.
Um, it looks like we've covered any of the questions. Are there any last ideas you'd like to leave us with? We do have a couple of minutes left.
I think that, if anybody is, I know that some choirs are coming back to performing together in some capacity. I think a very limited capacity with great distancing. Ironically enough, some of these games and these strategies work quite well for distancing. You're trying to send sound through, and I was talking about the idea you have a conversation and then you move away from each other. You can use the horrible situation of having to sing in an ensemble but be really far apart, which is kind of the opposite of what we want to do with an ensemble. But you can try to use it as a way, again, to foster listening skills and awareness skills and projection and articulation. I think it's the whole thing of just, the trying to make, lemonade out of the lemons as much as we can with what's going on right now. But just try to keep the work going, even if if things have to go move aside for now. Just know that we're going to get through this, and we're always working, looking forward. That's been my motto, my mantra with everybody I talk to, is let's keep looking forward. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. I know Tim Sharp, our ACDA executive director, has said, let's focus on what we can do,
yes,
not what we can't do. So
exactly.
very much the same vein.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate your expertise and your time and your energy to be with us today. And thank you to all of you that are viewing for participating. And we look forward to engaging with you throughout today and tomorrow for Voices United. And thanks again, Max, for setting up all the technology so that we could